All right, this is 4th grade, Module 5, Lesson 30, and in this lesson, students are going to be adding a mixed number and a fraction. A couple of things that are really cool is we're going to be doing something a little bit beyond just the standard algorithm that we were taught, us parents and teachers were taught back in the olden days. We're also going to be using, because we're going to be using decomposition, some number sense techniques in order for students to get the answer. And quite frankly, they're going to be getting the answer a little bit easier. They'll be able to use mental math as opposed to just blindly using that standard algorithm. So this is a really nice lesson, a nice way to build understanding with fractions. Let's get started. So we begin fairly simply. Let's take a look at question A. So we've got 4 ones. We've got 1/3 plus we have another 1/3. Now, you're not expected to write it out in words like this, but we can see that we end up with 4 ones, and now we have 2/3. So really, here you got 5 wholes or 5 ones, and now instead of having 1/4 plus 2/4, we now have 3/4. So parents and teachers, sometimes when we start adding a new concept, students start to do silly things like all of a sudden they start adding our denominators and getting 8 down in the denominator. And that's because they're now focused on some new concept, in this case adding mixed numbers to a fraction, that they begin to let go of some of the other stuff that they learned. So parents and teachers, don't let them do that. And if they do, that kind of means they're resorting to algorithm and blind rote memorization rather than actually understanding what's going on. So that might be a sign that you have to take a step back. Here, same idea, only now they've put the fraction in front of the mixed number, in which case this is going to be 7 8/8. But we know that 7 8/8 equals 8. Don't let the fact that these are 8s and this is an 8 trick you into seeing a pattern that isn't really there. That's a coincidence. So the purpose of this series of problems here is that we want students to see, I'll start with this one, 3 5/6. And how much do we need to add to this to get 1 whole? What are we missing from the 5/6 before we reach 1 whole? So parents and teachers, you may need to draw the fraction. Here's from 0 to 1. And you may need to cut this and show where 5/6 is. There's 5/6. And so that they can actually see that, oh, we need 1 more 6th in order to get 1 whole, which means we need 1 more 6th in order to turn 3 5/6 into 4. All right, so you may need to do this. Now, this is super important concept. This is a very important concept that we want our students to learn because it means that they can, they're developing a skill that will allow them to do some mental math, which makes, of course, these fractions a whole lot easier if they're able to do some of it in their head. And here is where that is going to pay off, is with a decomposition. And mentally, students ultimately are going to do this mentally. But right now, we're going to actually draw a number bond and the arrow way to show how to add, essentially. So let's do problem C. So you've got 4 4/6 right here. And we want to know, well, how much do we need to add to that 4/6 in order to get 1 whole? Well, in order to add to this 4/6 to get 1 whole, we need to have 2/6, which means 5/6 is going to be split up and decomposed into 2/6 and 3/6. There is our 5/6. So now we're able to add. We can add 4 4/6 plus 2/6. That gives us 5. Plus we have this extra 3/6 there. So our answer is 5 3/6. And if your students want, they can change that to 5 1/2. That's perfectly fine. But the point of this lesson is to focus on the adding We don't need to worry about the simplifying, but absolutely parents and teachers differentiate with your students to make it more relevant to them. Now the idea is we also are supposed to show the arrow method. So what does the arrow method look like? Well, you're going to start with 4 4/6. We're going to go up to 5, which means we're going to add 2/6. That gives us to 5. And then we're going to add the remaining 3/6. And that's going to get us to 5 3/6. So basically, this is another way of representing the stuff that we did up here. Now the purpose of these problems is just to let your students choose a method and let them run with it, because there is no one method that is perfect, right? The students are allowed to choose any method as long as it really makes sense to them. Now I will, however, show you another method that I didn't focus on in the previous slides, which is we could simply add the numerators, in which case we're going to get 2 6/5 in this case. And then students can take that improper fraction and change it, 6/5, yeah, that's right, 5/5 and 1/5. They can change that, decompose that 6/5 to make a whole. So there's our whole right there. And we can then add 2 and plus 1, because that's what this is. This is 1. And so that gives us 3 wholes and 1/5 left over. So these two guys join together to equal 3 plus the 5th that's left over. So there's our 3 1/5. Or students can do kind of what they had done in the previous slides, which is say, well, let's see. I'm looking at 6/8. I need 2/8 in order to make a whole. So I'm going to decompose this to 2/8 plus 2/8. And now I can add 3 6/8 plus 2/8. That gives me 4 wholes plus the 2/8 left over. And there's my answer, 4 2/8. And of course, if students want, they can simplify that to 4 1/4. The last example for this video, I'm going to solve it 2 ways real quick. 7 8/12 plus 11/12. And I'm going to do that again. 7 8/12 plus 11/12. Just to give you some flavor, a variety that our students can use. Because, golly, we want math to be fun and creative, and so let's show them a variety of ways. In fact, this is a great question for teachers to do a number talk with. Post this problem and let your students come up with a variety of different ways to get that the answer. So let's start with this one, and let's do, let's make this one whole. Well, in order to make this one whole, we have 8/12. So we need 4/12 more, which means we decompose 11/12 to be 4/12 and 7/12, because there's our 11. And then we can add, so 7 8/12 plus 4/12, that equals 8 wholes altogether, plus the extra 7/12 sitting there. And so there's one way to get 8 7/12. Another way to get 8 7/12 is we could start by just simply adding. You add, the whole number is just 7, and then you could do 8/12 plus 11/12. That gives you 19/12. And I'm going to take that over here, 7 19/12. And then, because 19/12 is greater than 1, we can decompose that to 12/12 plus 7/12. And that's how we decompose 19 to 12 and 7. And of course we see that this is one whole, so that gives us 8 plus the extra 7/12. So we got a couple of different ways to solve this problem. And of course there are others. And that wraps up 4th grade Module 5, Lesson 30. Students are adding a mixed number to a fraction, and they are having fun doing it.